In 18th century France, several significant changes in agricultural practices and land use further deteriorated the already harsh living conditions of the peasants. Traditionally, peasants had certain customary rights that allowed them to sustain their livelihoods, such as collecting wood from nearby forests for fuel and construction or grazing their flocks on uncultivated common lands. However, during this period, these traditional rights were increasingly restricted or outright denied. Forests were enclosed or reserved by landlords, and common lands were converted into private property or cultivated fields, leaving peasants with fewer resources to support their families. At the same time, the burden of taxation on peasants grew to unbearable levels. They were subjected to a variety of taxes imposed by the monarchy, local seigneurs, lords, and the church. These included the taille, a direct land tax, the capitation, a head tax, and the gabelle, a tax on salt, among others. The tax system was highly inequitable, with the third estate, especially peasants, bearing the vast majority of the fiscal burden, while the first, clergy, and second, nobility estates were largely exempt. In addition to these taxes, peasants were also required to perform forced labor, known as the corvée. This was a feudal privilege exercised by the lords, compelling peasants to work on public projects such as the maintenance of local roads and bridges without pay. Over time, the use of corvée labor expanded and became a more frequent obligation, placing additional strain on the peasantry, who were already struggling to manage their own farms and families. Besides these dues to the lord and the state, peasants had to pay various community taxes that funded the church, parish needs, and local infrastructure. The church often claimed a tithe, usually 1/10 of a peasant's produce or income, which further reduced their limited resources. Under such heavy economic pressure, even a single bad harvest could have devastating consequences. When crops failed due to poor weather or other factors, peasants faced not only food shortages and hunger, but also an inability to meet their tax and labor obligations. This vicious cycle often led to widespread starvation, increasing poverty, and social unrest. The desperation of the peasantry contributed significantly to the tensions and upheavals that eventually culminated in the French Revolution.